Hello everyone, my name is Dan and you are watching End Time Prophecy Counterpoint. I want to thank you for tuning in today. Well, the prophecy experts make the assertion that America is in Bible prophecy. And that's the point that they are making. And I want to make a counterpoint to that and prove to you that God doesn't recognize nations anymore because that's not important anymore. And I want to start in the book of Romans, chapter 10. Let me read a verse that Paul wrote to the Roman church. In Romans chapter 10, verse 12, Paul says this, "For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him." All right, now think about that. There is no difference between the Jew and the Greek. There used to be, but Paul says there is no longer any difference. Now, if Paul is saying that God doesn't recognize the individual Jew as a Jew or the individual Greek as a Greek, then why would he make a distinction between a nation of Jews or a nation of Greeks? And for that matter, speaking of the world today, why would he make any difference between people who live in America and people who live in, say, Canada or Brazil or anywhere else? Well, the fact is, he doesn't. He doesn't care about nationality anymore. And that's the beauty of the new covenant. You see, nationality was everything under the old covenant because God only entered into a covenant with one nation, and he did not recognize any other nation. And so he only entered into a covenant with one. Nobody else was allowed. Well, what happens under the new covenant? Well, nationhood doesn't matter anymore because God isn't looking at us dependent on where we live or what nation we belong to. And again, that is how the new covenant is far, far superior to the old. And these prophecy experts aren't telling you that. They're not explaining how the new covenant is superior in every way to the old, to the point at which God now doesn't recognize a Jew or a Greek. He just sees an individual who accepts the message of his son that he sent to first Israel and now the rest of the world. That's what matters, is the individual acceptance. So why in the world then do these prophecy experts say that there's a separate nation of America in Bible prophecy and that there's this separate nation of Israel that God has a plan for that is different than the plan that he has for the church? Why do they make the distinction when God isn't making a distinction between Jew and Greek, or Jew and Gentile if you prefer? So if God isn't making that difference, why do the prophecy experts make the difference? Well, it's because they have to divide before they can conquer. Jesus Christ was a unifier. He unified Jew and Gentile in one body, in one church. He did that. He got rid of the segregation and he united everybody. But the prophecy experts who insist that there's an America in prophecy and that there's an Israel in prophecy and so on, they are reestablishing that disparity, that difference, that distance between Jew and Gentile. And they're doing it to prop up their phony end-time prophecy doctrine. But there's a problem with that. See, the Bible tells us in one place that there's only one Lord and there's only one faith. So which is it? Is it Judaism? Is it Christianity? What is it? Is it separate and distinct nationhoods where God has different plans for different people? Or is it a plan where everybody is united as one under the new covenant that Christ mediated for us all, beginning with Israel? Which is it? So my question is, why would anyone believe these prophecy experts who divide the world up into nations and are setting nations against each other, or trying to say that God is favoring one nation over another nation or blessing one nation over another nation? Why are they doing that when the new covenant tells us that God doesn't even look at anybody as a Jew or a Greek anymore? You see, that's what Jesus was trying to tell Nicodemus. He was trying to tell him that there was coming a time very, very soon that his Hebrew birth would mean absolutely nothing. And Jesus said, you must be born of the water and the Spirit. Paul said in one place that circumcision, in other words, being a Jew, avails nothing. In other words, it has no advantage anymore. It used to be an advantage to being born a Hebrew because you were automatically in the Old Covenant and therefore eligible for all the benefits of God's protection and benevolence. It's not that way anymore. There's only one Lord and there's only one faith now. And everybody must be in the church. And you have to get there not as being part of a nation, but as an individual accepting the new covenant as mediated by Jesus Christ. So that's why Paul tells the Romans that God doesn't see anybody as Jew or Greek anymore, because for hundreds of years he watched Israel not abide in the covenant. And so therefore he just can't regard them that way anymore. And the book of Hebrews tells us in another place that if that first covenant was flawless and perfect, there'd be no need for a second. But there was a need. And it's because Israel could not abide in God's covenant. And so he just decided to not regard them that way anymore. They brought it on themselves. So the new covenant is in force now. The old covenant is not. And so the only way that we can be a part of the family of God is to accept Christ, accept the new covenant, forget about the old one, forget about all this division, forget about nationhood. Don't worry about where we're born. Don't worry about what nation is doing what to some other nation. That doesn't matter anymore, because it's up to the individual to accept the terms of the new covenant as mediated by Jesus Christ. So the prophecy experts make their point, but I'm using the New Testament to make a counterpoint to all of that. And that is that God doesn't see anybody as belonging to any nation anymore. He looks at someone who wants to be part of the family of God by accepting the new covenant and the one who mediated that covenant, and that is Jesus Christ. All right, folks, my name is Dan, and I want to thank you for your kind attention today. I do appreciate you watching End Time Prophecy Counterpoint, and if you have enjoyed this discussion, give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel and help me build up my subscriber base. I would really appreciate that. I also have a book available. It's called Blinded by the Rapture. Just go to Barnes & Noble or Apple Books, and you can find that. And you can do a search very quickly, find it very easily, and I urge you to get it. It will help you in your study. So once again, my name is Dan, and I want to thank you for your kind attention today. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.